Welcome to an episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo Malloy. So, the film that I will be discussing is Truck Turner. So, Truck Turner is a 1974 blaxploitation action film. It is directed by the late Jonathan Kaplan. I just found out before recording that he unfortunately passed away, so condolences to him. So he directed films such as The Slams and Bad Girls. The film was written by Michael Allen, who's known for Enter the Dragon, Oscar Williams, who's known for Black Belt Jones, and Lee Chapman under the pseudonym Jerry Wilkes and was known for A Swinging Summer. The film stars Isaac Hayes, Yaphet Kotto, and Nichelle Nichols. Here is the synopsis. Bounty hunter Mac Truck Turner, played by Isaac Hayes, almost always finds his target, but his latest prize, a pimp called Gator, played by Paul Harris, is killed while Turner is chasing him. Gator's girl, Dorinda, played by Nichelle Nichols, vows to avenge his death and offers ownership of her successful call girl operation to anyone who can knock off Turner. Upscale pimp Harvard Blue, played by Yaphet Kotto, steps in, upping the ante with professional assassins. Turner, however, isn't going down easily. So the film was released on June 26, 1974. In regards to critical reception, it has a 3.8 rating on Letterboxd. And at the time of this recording, it is available to stream on Prime Video and is available on demand, so check your local provider. All right, let's get into first discoveries. So, I remember I had the VHS tape of this movie growing up. Now, I don't recall my initial thoughts of the movie, but just watching that movie throughout the years, I remember like it was quite the intense movie to watch at the time, like as a kid. But over the years, I slowly started to appreciate that movie. I would say it's a fun action movie. I found like it was unusual for Isaac Hayes to be playing the lead character or the lead in this movie, just mainly because he's known for his music career. So, most notably, Shaft. He did the score for Shaft, the 1971 film, which he won an Oscar for that. And yeah, just with this movie and yeah, just rewatching it now, I would say for me that's one of his standout performances acting wise, because he would have acted like in smaller roles here and there. I remember he was in the movie I'm Gonna Get You Suckum, which does the parody of the black exploitation genre, and I thought he was hilarious in that movie. In terms of his acting career, he did a great job with the performances based on what I've seen, and it shows that he could handle the best of both worlds with that. And in regards to this movie, overall, it's worthwhile. I would say I don't know how I would rank it in regards to black exploitation movies as a whole, but I would say it's an entertaining movie and worthwhile to watch. So let's get into the highlights. So Isaac Hayes as Truck Turner. His character is quite the slob, especially at the beginning of the movie where we see he's snoozing. The place is a mess. The beer cans are everywhere, and and when the phone rings, like he would kind of slur his words and all that stuff, and then once he's done with the call, he hangs up, goes back to bed. And it kind of makes you wonder like what is going on with his character. Now it seems pretty evident that he's like this because of his girlfriend Annie being in jail for shoplifting. And also too is cute that with the cat Francis. I liked Francis. because we see him, he's always roaming around the apartment essentially. But yeah, I find even though the character is a slob, I feel like Isaac Hayes brings a cool factor to the character. Because for a slob though, like he dresses pretty nicely. Like for example, when he's wearing that blue, I don't know if it's a velvet or a suede jacket, when he is picking up Gary from the prison, because I thought that was such a cool ensemble, even though his partner Jerry would complain about his hygiene. But yeah, I feel like I don't know, like if the character would have worked if Isaac Hayes didn't play him, but yeah, I feel like if Isaac Hayes kind of brought a level of coolness to his character, then I think really then how it's supposed to have been on the page. But somehow he makes it work here in this movie. And in the terms of like action sequences, Isaac Hayes does a good job with that. Now the character would use mostly a gun, but he does fairly well with the combat scenes. I would say, particularly when Truck is fighting. The guys at the bar when they're trying to find Gator, and then also too, yeah, when he beats up Gary. Gee, that whole sequence, like with the prison, was quite hilarious with that one. But yeah, I would say Truck Turner is competent as a bounty hunter, and Isaac Hayes pulls that off in this movie. Also, too, want to highlight Nichelle Nichols as Dorinda. Now, I've this character is quite a departure from the roles that she is typically known for, most notably Uhura in the Star Trek franchise. Because she really has fun in this movie playing the villain, essentially. And with like the dialogue she has throughout this movie, it really is over the top, but somewhat memorable. The speech that she gives to the ladies after Gator's funeral is an example of that. And I do find it's hilarious that with Dorinda keeps said in during that scene, we are a family, we have to stick together, but really though, like her character doesn't really display the family love, I suppose, because she's quite harsh on the women in this movie. I guess because since she runs things she has to be that way, but yeah, it was just hilarious when her character, says we have to stick together and all that stuff, and then she goes off at one point saying, "Oh, with the two girls that left, they better be, you know, in Iceland, otherwise she's gonna cut their throats." Essentially, now that's the clean version that I gave, essentially, because it's a bit more vulgar in the movie. But I really liked, yeah, Nichelle Nichols in this movie as Dorinda. So quite the departure from what she's typically known from, based on what I've seen. Also, too, what I like how with Truck Turner, yes, he does well as a bounty hunter, but we also see his softer side, particularly with his girlfriend Annie. Now, he really cares for her, even though his partner Jerry and his boss Nate kind of urge him to dump her essentially because she's did the shoplifting and all that stuff, but he ignores her. And I guess with Annie really has an influence on him because when she's around, the apartment is nice and clean compared to what we saw at the beginning of the movie, which is a pigsty essentially. And throughout the movie, the bad guys are essentially going after him, essentially. So it's quite unfortunate that he had to set her up at the department store by putting all like the items in her bag and all that stuff. But I guess at the same time, though, he had no choice because she refused to leave him. even though she knew that people were after him. He had to do what he had to do to keep her safe, and even though she's upset, but in a way, it's for her own good. And I would say at least that he showed up on time to pick her up towards the end of the movie, because when he picks her up the first time, he is late. um yeah, essentially he's late, and while and she's sitting at the bus stop, and tries to make nice of her at the time, but at least at the end he shows up on time, has the new cat has like all their belongings, and luckily she, they make amends and they headed off essentially. So yeah, they're not bad as a couple, I guess. They bring out the best of each other, and you could argue at times the worst of each other. So, also, too, I want to note that, as I mentioned, I think one of the screenwriters worked on Black Belt Jones, and it's interesting that there are some notable people. If you've seen Black Belt Jones, some of the actors in that movie appear in this one. So, I'm not going to go through all of the actors from Black Belt Jones. I'll just say a select few. So Jerry in this movie, Chuck's partner, he played Toppy in Black Belt Jones. He was helping um, the lead character in that movie. Also, too, you had Scatman Crothers. He plays in this movie Duke, the older pimp. He was Pop in Black Bolt Jones. He ran the dojo until his demise, unfortunately. And also, to a notable one, Eddie Smith. He played, I guess, he's credited as druggist in this movie. That so he's the one where I guess Truck and Jerry approach him to get Gator's address and all that stuff. And but in Blackville Jones, he plays Oscar. He's one of the henchmen or thugs to the main villain in that movie. And Mel Novak, he was the doctor in this movie. But in Black Bolt Jones, he's credited as Blue Eyes, which I believe is one of the bad guys in that movie. So if you guys seen Black Bolt Jones, yeah, it'll be a fun game, like to point out like who was in from who the actors from that movie that were in this movie. That will be like a fun game, I suppose, if that's what you wanted to do. And I find it interesting too, because I think with Black Bolt Jones, that was under Warner Brothers, and this movie Chuck Turner is under MGM. So I find that's quite interesting. Also, too, as a highlight, the deaths of both Francis, the cat, and Jerry were quite tragic. Now, I felt bad for the cat. I felt bad for Annie when they found the cat was hanging at the apartment. Gee, the bad guy should have just left the cat alone because the cat wasn't bothering anyone. But I guess something, they just had to do it, to show that they're that bad. And while with Jerry, unfortunately with him, he got essentially blown away as he was reaching the door at the office. Now, I do find it's interesting that if you notice at the door, it had that sign that said, the door to this door is the way to freedom, something along those lines. Because we see that twice. Because we see that the first time during the first act when him and Truck are entering the office. And then, of course, the second time when Jerry is alone at night, which unfortunately leads to his demise. So I guess, yeah, that stuff had to happen to, of course, motivate Chuck Turner to get his revenge, so to speak. But yeah, quite sad. It's memorable, but sad. Also, too, the use of the theme song in this movie now, um, based off the blaxploitation movies that I've seen, the theme music usually plays during the opening credits and the end credits. Now, sometimes it could be one or the other, but in this case, it plays both in the opening and the end credits, but also too throughout the movie when Truck Turner is pursuing one of the bad guys. So I thought that was an interesting note. Now, it doesn't play like for every kill that Truck does, but for most of them, that happens. And also, too, there's a lot of humor in, in this movie, whether it's intentional or not. Because like with Truck and Jerry, they have their back and forth always. A notable example is when Jerry is driving his wife's car and Truck pressures him to drive faster, which Jerry didn't want to do, but ultimately he decided to do it. And they had to stop until the cop pulled over, and then there was a whole bit with the officer, questioning them and all that stuff. I thought that was quite a hilarious sequence. Also, too, when Truck shoots one of the pimps, he's wearing the one wearing the overalls. I thought it was quite funny when the character was. It looked like he was jumping from afar. But I bet he's supposed to be I don't know, be a bit lifting up the chest, but it looked like he was quite jumpy. I thought that was quite hilarious. And then also too, of course, with the dialogue, with Dorinda's dialogue, with her one-liners, essentially those were quite hilarious. But yeah, I thought the humor in this movie worked for me, whether it was intentional or not. That's up to you to decide. And then also too, I enjoyed like when he's at the hospital with Annie visiting Nate, and this is after Jerry's death. There's a shot of him where he looked like he's walking towards the camera. He looked very serious or very pissed off, essentially. I thought that was quite intense, but in a way, it's I would say quite effective. And final note I have for highlights: Gator's funeral. I guess in a way, though, it brought the entire PIMP community together. Now, I gathered that the PIMP or the pimps, they are aware of each other, probably competing with each other to an extent. So it shows that they are able to put their differences aside to I guess to support Dorinda in a way and to see Gator, since that I guess Gator was killed by an outsider, so which was Truck Turner in this case, and I found that's quite interesting that they're able to work together because usually they're in competition, but that doesn't happen in this movie, and especially too when Dorinda is able to bring them together to essentially go after Truck Turner. I thought that was quite fascinating. So let's get into the lowlights section. So, speaking on that note, let's talk about Dorinda. After Gator's death, essentially she's pissed off. She wants the pimps to kill Truck Turner. And I'm thinking to myself, why doesn't she do it herself? Well, it seems like she's the type of person that doesn't want to get her hands dirty and wants to get other people to do it for her. But I suppose like she wanted to do this because I imagine that she's probably not in the position to run things herself, because I'm not sure like if her and Gator were running things 50-50, or if he ran the business, had the majority stake while she didn't really had much stake into it. It's unclear on that part. But I just wondered, why couldn't she do this by herself? But she looked like the type to get to essentially to avoid the mess essentially. But it's funny that like towards the end when everyone is dead at this point, she tries to shoot him, which failed, and she dies. So I don't know. I don't know. Also too, as a low light, let's talk about Blue, Harvard Blue. So I thought Yaphet Kotto did a good job playing this character. It seemed like the way, I don't know, that it's marketed that he was going to be the main villain, but in a way he's not. I feel like that's more on Dorinda. But but yeah, I thought it didn't make sense for him to change his mind on Truck. So a backstory. So essentially, apparently, he and Gator had beef because Gator stole one of his women. Essentially, then after Gator dies, he shows up at the funeral. He spits on Gator's face, which upsets Dorinda. And then we see him again during Dorinda's presentation or her proposal, whatever you want to call it, where she's trying to convince the pimps to go after Truck Turner. Blue essentially he laughs it off, saying doesn't take it too serious. Essentially said, I will probably not be seeing any of you guys again. And he's like, I'm going to say goodbye to some orphans, and he leaves. And then next time we see him, so at this point, Chuck Turner survived an assassination attempt. So he and Annie, they go back to the apartment. They find Blue there. He's cuddling Francis there. And then when Chuck Turner asks, "What are you doing here?" Blue claims to be checking him out and tells him that you should retire, essentially. And then Chuck forces him out of the apartment. So I just wondered what changed in between, because he seemed to be doing fine from a financial standpoint because he always kept mentioning, oh, he has an insurance company, not the insurance company like State Farm essentially, but essentially he calls his hit group the insurance company, I suppose. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, he seems to be doing fine, I guess, from business standpoint. So it's not like he needs during this offer to survive. And he doesn't have a personal grudge towards Structure, but he is aware of his reputation. So that's why I'm confused as to why Blue decides to, get involved when he didn't really need to at the end of the day. I guess what, because they need someone who's more, I guess, quote unquote intellectual to go after Truck. That's why he's there. But I just think for the character, just in terms of the way that it's presented, it did not make sense. Maybe let's say if Blue had a personal grudge towards Truck, I could buy that. Like, for instance, I don't know, that he either killed one of his associates or essentially arrested one of his associates or something along those lines. But none of that happened. So yeah, I don't know. I do not know. So yeah, and then with Blue's death scene, I thought that's quite hilarious. So essentially, Chuck Turner shoots Blue at the back, and then this is outside the hospital. And then he stumbles, he falls down, he gets shot again, and then it looked like, yeah, he's very wobbly. And the way that is framed is like he's taking his time. Like there's no music in the background, you just hear like this wind effect essentially, and I guess the sounds from from Blue essentially. So for me, like I don't know, it could be seen as both a highlight and a low light because in a way I kind of admire it, but at the same time I'm like, this is way too long. Because in a way, he's kind of like the Energizer Bunny here. Because even though like the battery's running low, like he still keeps going and going essentially. But yeah, I liked how that there was a shot of like a tight close up of his face as he was, wobbly and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I just feel like it took way too long for this stuff seemed to happen. I guess I don't know. In a way, like I said, it's admirable to look, but it's just it could have been done and over with. But I don't know. I don't know. And also too, as low light, with the bar fight scene when Truck and Jerry are fighting those people inside the bar. There was some handheld camera movement happening there for me. I just felt it was unnecessary since most of the cinematography was quite still. So I felt there was no need to do the handheld stuff. I don't know if that was used for dramatic effect. I felt that wasn't needed per se, but yeah. And then lastly, I felt it was quite off, like when Truck is entering the hair salon to meet Dorinda. There was like this off-screen dialogue between Truck and Jerry, and I felt like that was added in post to, I guess, to give context on why Truck is there. But we already know why he's there. He's trying to look for gators, essentially. So I felt like that wasn't needed. But in a way, it was quite hilarious because it was so out of place. So there is that. And let's talk about trivia. Some fun facts here. So apparently, the film started as a script by Lee Chapman about a Caucasian bounty hunter. It was bought by Fred Weintraub, who was in a partnership with Larry Gordon. Chapman later recalled, I remember going into the office and with my usual in Susans, arrogance, announced that in that case I wasn't going to do any freebie rewrites. The response? That's okay, he doesn't want you on the project anyway. And then it became a blaxploitation film. About pimps and whores, right? I don't think any of that was in my script, and I'm not sure why I even received the story credit. I used Jerry Wilkes as a pseudonym that's part of my ex husband's name. Interesting. So the late director Jonathan Kaplan, said Isaac Hayes was cast because at the time he had made an incredible Splasher Shaft soundtrack album. Along with his fantastic score, everyone remembered his sensational performance of the song on the Oscar show, so the studio thought they could exploit his popularity by having him compose the score for Chuck Turner. But he really wanted to act as well, so they cast him to sweeten the deal and make sure he would do the music. They didn't care if he could act or not. Wow, wow, that's interesting. And yeah, like I said, Isaac Hayes did a good job with the role. So, and he also did a good job with the soundtrack as well too. I wouldn't say it's as great as Shaft, but yeah, it's not bad with the score for this movie. So Yaphet Kotto, apparently he only agreed to play Harvard Blue because he was going through a divorce at the time and needed money. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Because I think had the direction for the character been more clear, I think it could have worked out better. But yeah, I thought he did great given the material that he was working with, but it could have been better. Jonathan Kaplan said everyone involved had a great time shooting the scene where Nichelle Nichols berates the local pimps. Everyone couldn't stop laughing. He said he wanted to see how many motherfuckers they could fit in one scene. That's funny. That's funny because I'm wondering if that is a scene of the proposal essentially, or if it was afterwards when this was after when some of the the pimps got killed by Chuck Turner, and that's her berating them. I can't remember if it's one or the other, but yeah, I imagine she had a blast working on this movie. And yeah, this film for Nichelle Nichols was her only entry into the blaxploitation genre. She declined all offers for other blaxploitation films, only to concentrate on the sci-fi convention appearances, especially Star Trek conventions, and later as a recruiter for NASA. Interesting. And then lastly, the soundtrack for Truck Turner was composed by Isaac Hayes. The soundtrack failed to reach the mass popularity of the Hayes' previous soundtrack effort, Shaft's soundtrack. It was originally released on a double record album on vinyl, which are mostly found in bargain bins. However, in 1993, it was released in a double CD album along Hayes' other lesser known soundtrack of the movie Three Tough Guys, and later released on its own CD in 2002. Some of the music score was used by filmmaker Quentin Tarantino in the Kill Bill series. Yes, I remember this. Because I think in Volume 1, it was used when the bride was on the wheelchair. She's coming from the hospital. She's trying to get into the truck that's labeled Pussy Wagon, essentially. So, yeah, yeah. Good use of uh, score on that one. All right. So, last question, the most important question. Should this movie be rediscovered? And I say absolutely yes. It's a fun movie to watch. I say, like, if you're a fan of the genre, you'll enjoy this movie. And I would say, yeah, like, the cast did a good job with the movie. Thought the direction was good. The script was good, even though it could have been better here and there. But otherwise, yeah, I would say it's worthwhile. And I don't know how I would rank it amongst the black exploitation genre specifically, but yeah, I would say it's worthwhile to watch. All right, so that concludes this talk on Truck Turner. So if you want to find me, I'm on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at Numphy Malloy. You can find the podcast on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. You can visit buymeacoffee.com/RD Movies Pod to support via donation, but also to look at posts there on that platform. You can join the Rediscovered Movies Hub, which is a community group on the website on Wix, which is rdmoviespod.wixsite.com/official. There you could interact with others, share thoughts on the podcast, and more. On Spotify, you can answer the featured poll, rate the podcast, and leave a comment. On Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, and Podchaser, you could leave a review and rate the podcast. And you could submit questions, comments, or suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com. Or you could fill the form on our link tree to be featured for a Q&A episode, which will air after the end of the season. So I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.